Widespread severe thunderstorms are set to dominate the national picture as we enter the first week of 2024, and some extreme temperatures in northwestern WA. So it's been a very wild week, that's for sure, in terms of severe weather, and there's another wild week of severe storms on the way as we enter the last 24 hours of 2023. I hope everyone watching has had a great year. I'm wishing everyone a very, very great and prosperous 2024. But nonetheless, your latest forecast update brought to you by Force 13AU for the New Year's Eve weather. If you do end up enjoying this video, please do consider subscribing. We've got grand plans for 2024. Leave a like on the video while you're at it and give us a weather report of your location in the comment section down below. But let's jump into the national forecast for today and tomorrow. You can see headlining it extremely hot across the Pilbara region of Western Australia. Daytime maxima today up to 50 degrees Celsius. Marble Bar got to 49.3 yesterday, and it's going to be hotter in some locations today. Storms across the Kimberley and the Northern Territory and also in the Goldfields region of WA, and then storms and severe thunderstorms extending north of New South Wales through all of coastal Queensland right up towards the Cape York Peninsula. And a lot of these storms could definitely be severe, with the risk of large hailstones, heavy rainfall and damaging and locally destructive winds. So make sure you are staying safe and staying up to date with the weather forecast and the Bureau of Meteorology warnings. Now, we also have the potential for a weak tropical cyclone to develop across Vanuatu and the Solomon Islands in around 10 days' time. Now, I dropped the chances on this yesterday, but I've reinstated them considering there is a little bit more model support and it's becoming a lot more consistent across a lot of major forecast models. And we're going to take a look at that a lot later on in the video, so stay around if you are interested in that. Main point right now is that it's not any land threat to Australia at this time for at least the next 14 days or so there is no need to panic. So I'm going to zoom right in and take a look at the weather forecast for southeast Queensland, in particular the rain and storm forecast. As we enter the first day of 2024, we're looking out for a lot of storm activity in the evening blowing in from the coast, and that will be probably a heavy rainfall and pulsed thunderstorm threat. So nothing too crazy in terms of supercell activity, but the supercell activity, if it does occur, will probably happen from around Tuesday the 2nd onwards, and we'll get into more detail in that later on in the storm update. Now, temperature nationwide, this is a little snapshot of the New Year's forecast right now, and as you can see, it's going to be mild conditions nationwide as the clock ticks to midnight before really hot days across the nation's west and red centre take hold. It also looks like we're going to see quite a few hot days across South Australia, maybe even extending down towards Adelaide, and maybe even some hot days up to 30 degrees Celsius in Tasmania as well. So it's going to be that typical summer pattern where the red centre gets belted with hot weather and the coastlines stay mild, but it does look like a couple of hot days could creep into Perth. And we could also be seeing some warm temperatures up to around 30 to 32 degrees Celsius around the 7th and the 8th for Melbourne. Sydney and Brisbane, however, remaining fairly average and fairly stock standard weather conditions across the New Zealand and Vanuatu, those sort of regions as well. Now, taking a look at rainfall for the nationwide, for the next 10 days, you can see reds and blacks, very heavy, locally intense rainfall, and a lot of that blows up across New South Wales and Queensland around the 2nd of January. And I've really slowed this one down to give you a full look at the picture over the next sort of 3 days. A lot of thunderstorm activity to blow up across Victoria and into New South Wales, and this thunderstorm activity will extend further north across Queensland. Now, this does look like organised supercell thunderstorm activity, so we're really looking out for the risk of damaging winds, locally intense rainfall, large hailstones, and maybe even the chance of 1 or 2 tornadoes to spin up. But then after that, as we start to get to the end of the first week of 2024, it's just going to be that evening pulse thunderstorm activity stuff across Australia's north and centre. But a lot of locations are expecting substantial rainfall totals as a result of this weather event. So there will be places that pick up to 300 millimetres from these thunderstorms over the next 10 days. Now, taking a look at the satellite imagery for the past 12 hours, you can see dominated by a lot of thunderstorm activity across Western Australia from a bunch of clouds streaming in from the Indian Ocean, and also some thunderstorm activity that occurred across the Queensland coastline, dumped a lot of rainfall, might I add, that's now contracted to the coast and over the Coral Sea. Let's jump into the forecast models and see what locations could get what conditions over the next 10 days. So right now, at least, it's a reasonably calm picture nationwide in terms of current rainfall and thunderstorm activity. We're expecting storms to develop across Queensland. We're going to get into that forecast first, and you can see quite a lot of thunderstorm activity already starting to fire around Coffs Harbour and Grafton, and just outside of Taroom as well. We're already seeing an intense thunderstorm materialise here, and I believe this storm will get severe warned very shortly. But we'll have a look at the forecast right now. We're going to start it off with the Access G3, considering it's the Bureau of Meteorology's own forecast forecast model and the highest resolution data that we have. So there's a low pressure system situated just off the coast, and this is bringing in a lot of this moisture onshore, which is, as you can see down here, it's starting to collide with the coastline, and there's thunderstorm activity materializing out of that. We're going to see thunderstorms develop over here around St. George, Roma, and then across to Toowoomba later on into the day. So as we get into about 2 p.m. local time, for Brisbane, we're looking out for a very intense band of thunderstorms up towards the north of Brisbane, up towards Rockhampton, maybe even as far north as Mackay. Just north of Emerald, actually, the forecast model has a very intense band of thunderstorms up here around Claremont area. Now, the reds and the blacks are the most dangerous thunderstorms that you can see on this forecast. We're looking out for very intense rainfall here. That is a strong thunderstorm that the model runs have forecasted, and I believe that it's just consistent, very heavy thunderstorm activity across the Great Dividing Range, the Granite Belt, that sort of region. And it only gets worse as we get into tonight. So 6 p.m. local time, there's a lot of this messy pulse thunderstorm activity that's fired around the Brisbane metro area. Nothing too crazy. Maybe one of these storms could be severe warned. Not really sure yet, but we're not looking out for some very strong thunderstorms to blow through. It's up here and across the coastline where we're looking out for the very strong thunderstorm activity. You can see Claremont here, just north of that. You're looking out for a very strong thunderstorm band to move through. And that'll move up towards Charters Towers before dissipating as the clock gets to midnight. In the first couple of hours of 2024, be looking out for a relatively clear picture as you'd expect nationwide. I believe all these locations are, a little bit skewed up, so don't take the names at face value, because Cairns is not down here near where Melbourne is. Anyway, so as we played this through on the first day of 2024, as we get into the evening, it's going to become a lot more representative of what we're expecting for the first week of 2024. Taking a look at this, there's a lot of thunderstorm activity inland on the Great Dividing Range. It's really blown up quite dramatically. From this onshore flow that we're seeing, maybe a low pressure system situated inland, which is just keeping this thunderstorm activity located right here. A lot of moisture in the air. The conditions are just perfect for thunderstorms to fire. Now, these thunderstorms will likely be pulse thunderstorms, the majority of them will be, but they could organize into squall lines, and as we know with squall lines, the risk of damaging and locally destructive winds do remain. So zooming out a little bit and taking a look at the Australian picture, you can see Tuesday and into Wednesday, we're really seeing this thunderstorm threat develop across Victoria and southern New South Wales, and this will extend right up through central Queensland into far north Queensland, believe it or not. So very widespread thunderstorm activity. It's nothing too crazy on Tuesday, but we could definitely be seeing the risk of some storms firing out some large hailstones, damaging winds and heavy rainfall. But I think it's Wednesday and Thursday where we really see the bulk of this thunderstorm activity blow up across southern New South Wales. Very strong thunderstorm activity down here. There will be locations around Canberra that pick up to 50 millimetres from this storm system on Wednesday, and it's a very similar story into Thursday as well. You can see strong thunderstorms firing across the Great Dividing Range on New South Wales and up in towards central Queensland, and even across into Northern Territory and northern WA around the Kimberley region. And again, into Friday, Saturday, it's the same story, just storms in the evening. And some of these storms, like I said, could be potentially strong. They could be intense, and they could bring the risk of life-threatening conditions. Now, I've just cited a low-pressure system moving through here. Now, this is going to drag a lot of thunderstorm activity from the tropical north across the Northern Territory and through Queensland and the northern corners of South Australia. Now, this is where the rain is going to become a substantial threat. We're looking out for a lot of rainfall Sunday the 7th and Monday the 8th of January across Central Australia. We could be seeing rainfall totals approach 50 millimetres for places that only pick up 250 millimetres in a calendar year. And so a lot of rainfall is expected to fall, and I believe minor flood watches will be issued as we approach the end of the first week of 2024. So once again, Monday the 8th, Tuesday the 9th, there will be a lot of rainfall across Central Australia from a low pressure system that's going to drag a lot of this tropical moisture inland. And if we do jump across to the rainfall accumulation, you can see a substantial amount of rainfall across Central Australia. The blues, over 100 millimetres of rain in the next 10 days. You can see there's a lot of locations expecting more than 50 to 100 millimetres of rain across Central Australia, up towards Mount Isa, maybe another 100 millimetres of rain. And once again, in the red centre around South Australia and Lake Eyre, there's locations that will pick up to 50 millimetres of rain from this thunderstorm event. And keep in mind, these are places that can go years without rainfall. So we'll likely be seeing rivers here flood for the first time in maybe a decade. Lake Eyre could potentially fill from this rainfall event. And yeah, it's definitely going to be that once-in-a-year rainfall event that moves through South Australia, the Northern Territory, and parts of inland Queensland and New South Wales. Other forecast models are being more bullish with the amount of rainfall. There's places north of Alice Springs around what looks to be Tennant Creek that will pick up to 250 millimetres of rain from this rainfall event. And because it's tropical moisture in the form of thunderstorms, the rainfall could be very hit and miss in places. There'll be places that pick up a whopping amount of rainfall and other locations that pick up next to nothing. One thing's for sure, and what's set in stone, is the Sunshine Coast, the Gold Coast, Brisbane, right down towards sort of Newcastle. There's going to be widespread totals above 50 millimetres, approaching 100 millimetres in places. So make sure you are preparing for heavy rainfall across the next 10 days, because if a thunderstorm gets on top of you, there could definitely be the risk of minor to moderate flooding, as we've seen in the past sort of week or so since Christmas, when we've had some very intense thunderstorms move through that part of the world. So apart from that, we're monitoring the South Pacific as well, and also the Indian Ocean for potential tropical cyclone activity. If we go right out to the end of the forecast run, there's a tropical low here in the Solomon Sea and also a tropical low here south of Fiji. Now, this has been fairly consistent on the Axis G3 forecast, so we'll be watching this situation play out quite closely, because there is definitely the chance of a cyclone forming from either of these tropical lows in around the 10 to 12 day threshold. But from the steering currents, which is the direction that air is being pushed in the upper atmosphere, I don't think these are going to become a land threat to Australia. The maximum land threat that they're going to be is towards Vanuatu, New Caledonia, Fiji, and maybe the northern extremities of New Zealand. But yeah, I really don't think that these are going to be land threats to Australia. So if I do say cyclone, there's no point in panicking, because it is unlikely. Now, over in the Indian Ocean, it's that time of the year where we're expecting cyclones to spin themselves up. And we've already got something here kind of in the central Indian Ocean, actually well offshore from WA, that spun itself up here as what looks to be a very weak tropical cyclone, maybe might be a high-end tropical low at this point. It's really not something, but I can tell you, if something does form here and wind shear and the atmospheric conditions align, there's ample fuel for this cyclone to become very strong. But it is very unlikely to see tracks from the formation zones offshore from Indonesia and cyclones track towards the WA coastline. That's very unlikely to happen. It's very rare to see that happen. The most likely land threats are going to be tropical lows that form in the Arufa Sea and up towards the Timor Sea as well, and none of that is on the forecast. So headlining that, and to round that off, there's no land threat for tropical cyclones across Australia for the next 10 days. Thankfully, because I believe everyone is cycloned out after Cyclone Jasper. Now, that is a lot of cyclone words in one sentence. But yeah, apart from that, we could take a brief look at temperature for the next couple of days across northern Western Australia, just to get a scope of how hot it is going to be. There are locations that will pick up a daytime maxima approaching 50 degrees Celsius today and into tomorrow as well. Roebourne 48 degrees Celsius, in fact 49 by the looks of things. Very, very hot conditions around Karratha and Roebourne. So if you are driving through the area, just make sure you've got plenty of water, because you don't want to break down in this sort of a remote spot here under the extreme heat. And widespread very hot conditions across Western Australia. I'm just seeing daytime maxima for the next 10 days above 42 degrees Celsius for a lot of locations. So it is definitely summer. It is definitely that heat wave conditions that we experience every single year. It's nothing too crazy or too far out of the ordinary, but it is something that could pose a risk to lives, considering just how hot it is. You don't want to be outside in temperatures that are above 45 degrees Celsius. It's just really nasty stuff. So make sure you are cooling off. And another thing to note very briefly is hot conditions are expected to move down the West Australian coastline into Perth, and we could be seeing a really hot run of weather into the second week of 2024, so that'll be interesting to watch and see how that develops. We could be seeing some locations pick up to 44 degrees Celsius for a daytime maxima, and down to Adelaide and Melbourne as well. A very hot day to start the second week of 2024. Monday the 8th, 32 degrees Celsius for Melbourne. In fact, some locations looking like they're getting close to 30. Launceston 28 degrees Celsius for Tasmania, and same with Adelaide, quite warm down there as well. But that is it for the weather forecast for New Year's Eve. I hope everyone has had a fantastic 2023, and I'm wishing you all the best in 2024. From the Force 13 AU and Oceania team, a very happy new year, and also a Merry Christmas if I haven't reached you then. It's been a great ride. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like on the video while you're at it. It's been great giving you the weather forecast, and I'll see you next year. Goodbye.
Thank you for watching our content this update. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to get more updates covering all things weather and geophysics impacting Australia and the Oceania region. Subscribe to our other channels for more content from across the network, and be sure to check out our website where you can find free access to floater and radar imagery and articles on everything weather and much more. If you wish to support us directly, you can purchase some of our merchandise. We have a wide variety of clothing and homeware, or you could become an Ultimate Fan, which is the best way to directly support us, granting you some sweet perks and offers, including features in our custom storm animations, live streams, and much more.